That music means it's once again time for Filmcast Without a Cause. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Patrick.
And we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, including the giving out of our first annual Golden ACs, the awards for summer blockbusters. I'm really excited about that, Pat.
I'm going to have to redo my notes because I thought it was about the best air conditioning unit you could possibly buy. And I hit Consumer Reports, went to Sears, Best Buy.
Well, luckily, we don't record this thing live, so you have some time to go back and do a list. But before we get to that, we have reviews, we have all sorts of other fun stuff, and, of course, the news. And the first item on my list, a trailer came online for this TV show called Star Wars Detours. Did you see this, Pat?
I saw it after you posted this link in the show notes. What is the story with this? Seth Green is the man behind it? That's all I've heard?
It's the people behind Robot Chicken, who, if you've seen their Robot Chicken Star Wars stuff, it's really funny stuff. It's probably some of my favorite Star Wars-related things ever, probably. They're funny, they're random. But they are doing this new cartoon series in association with George Lucas and Lucasfilm, and I believe Cartoon Network. It's called Star Wars Detours. It turns out when you do Star Wars humor but without the action figures, it comes off as really, really lame looking.
Yeah, because without knowing that context, well, even probably with the context, it feels like it's really too close to the inside the studio. They're like, hey, you know what's funny about this character? And it's not funny at all.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be curious to see how it plays out, but the animation style is kind of ugly. It just looks a little bit cheap. And Star Wars, I mean, the Robot Chicken thing was funny because mainly it was assemblages of little 5-second jokes they did in various Robot Chicken episodes and then cobbled together. So if the Star Wars stuff was your favorite stuff, that was a great place to see it all in one place. And they're doing one with the DC superheroes, which I'm really looking forward to. But this led me to the question, can Star Wars ever be cool again? Since the prequels ended, I think there was hope with each ensuing movie. And maybe as they've aged in time, there's been a considerable backlash towards Star Wars. I'm not saying anything new here, right, Pat?
Oh, I completely agree. People just seem to get angrier and angrier. There's even that film, The People Against George Lucas, which I've yet to see, but everyone was pretty much on board with hating the man.
With Phantom Menace recently released in theaters, they just announced when episodes 2 and 3 are going to come back in retrofitted 3D. It seems to always bring up this bad blood of how much people do not like those 3 movies. And then every time a new home video version is released, there's always more tweaks to them. I know the Clone Wars cartoon is very popular with younger children and probably some fans, but you don't hear a lot about that. I remember in my let's say my high school, my prime nerd days, when it was actually cooler to like Star Wars than Star Trek. Am I imagining that, or is that kind of...
I'd say you'd have more nerd cred that way. Or, I mean, only the nerdiest of the nerds would ever come out and say they like Star Trek more than Star Wars.
Yeah, it was more mainstream and more accessible, right?
Absolutely.
And again, I'm not saying anything new here, but with the success of the Abrams film, the fact that Star Trek is a lot more selective in what they're putting out into the world, there's not like a half a dozen TV shows anymore, that it's kind of, the tables have turned, and now it's cool to like Star Trek, but Star Wars, as soon as you say you like Star Wars, first thing that people come to mind are probably Jar Jar Binks, mullets.
Oh, just ruining all their films basically is what it is. To me personally, it's they cannot stop meddling with Jedis. It's like, get over the Jedi War. Leave it alone. You know, nobody cares about that stuff. I'm sure plenty of people do, but it's just like, you know, having too much ice cream, eventually you're going to get either a brain freeze or vomit because you've just had too much ice cream. It's that way, to me at least, with this Jedi nonsense. Leave it be. Quit touching up old films.
Or move it forward. They're hung up back in this prequel that the fans have kind of rejected. I'm sure it still has its defenders, I'm sure. And when they are doing stuff with the classic characters or in the classic timeline, and there's this TV show that's never been developed, or is constantly in development, and we haven't heard any concrete news of. It's jokey things like Star Wars Detours, the Robot Chicken stuff, or did you hear anything? I mean, again, I don't own an Xbox, but there was a game called Star Wars Connect. It was a dancing game, or there's a part of the game that's a dancing game, and
oh my goodness.
You dance to songs that are popular tunes, but changed with Star Wars lyrics, and then you're like Chewbacca or Princess Leia, or whatever. The franchise is probably about as uncool as it can be at this point. But I think there is hope.
Well, I'll just get right at the point and say that the only way it's ever going to be cool again is if George Lucas passes away and leaves it to somebody who's a faithful fanboy and not somebody who's willing to just rake in cash at every other step.
You know, I had a little bit of hope when he recently stepped down as head of Lucasfilm, and now Kathleen Kennedy, who is a longtime Hollywood producer, is technically the president of Lucasfilm, but I don't think she's going to do anything with the franchise probably until Lucas passes. And I wonder if he has some stipulations in his will that the fans are not allowed to release the original Blu-ray versions of the theatrical cuts or whatever. I mean, that's what the movie The People versus George Lucas is about, is people claiming that the movies now belong to them and not the director and the creator. And he keeps insisting, no, they're my films, so I can add a Jawa here or make the Ewoks sing a much funnier song or add farts. That's mainly what he does, is add fart jokes.
Or have Han shoot second.
Yeah, Han shooting first. There are some cool things being done in the Star Wars universe, and I'm far from an expert. I'd love to hear from maybe we have a Filmcast Without a Cause fan who is still up on the novels or on the comic books. But there is hope, a new hope, if you will. I think in transmedia, further it gets removed from the films and George Lucas's involvement, I think the cooler things could possibly be. I don't know if you saw this trailer for 1313, Star Wars 1313.
Yeah, I did see it. It does look pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's another video game. Some of the Star Wars video games lately, I've never played Knights of the Old Republic, which is a massive multiplayer online game. Should have brought Jason Burns on for this. He's both a Star Wars guy and a video game guy.
Well, I can say just from listening to their podcast that they're not fans of that game either. So okay. I don't know.
But I have played, what was it called? The Force Unleashed, which was an action game set between the prequels and A New Hope. And it's a pretty disappointing game. But this 1313 game, which is a horror game with stormtroopers and maybe zombies, or it looks scary and looks cool. It's rated M for mature. There's some hope there, but if I had any other advice for the franchise, is that it should take maybe a step from Star Trek, and not necessarily, because I don't think they're going to make new films anytime soon, but they should just, I say this knowing that they're not going to, but they should just walk away and not produce any television or video games or books or comics for at least just 2 years. They can still make toys, they can still sell the Lego stuff, but I think you need to create a demand. You need to make people remember what they liked about Star Wars. So take it away and then bring it back with something really good.
Well, I'll just say that you can keep dreaming that dream, but knowing that, like, my friends who have little kids who watch Clone Wars and all this junk with them, that's not going to happen. They're making plenty of money, and they're gonna. It's not going to happen. Maybe we should just move on.
We should move on. Pipe dreams. Talking about things that will happen and things I didn't even know were in the pipeline. Focus Features, which is the independent leg of Universal, announced that they will be releasing a new Gus Van Sant film this year for Oscar contention. I didn't even realize Gus Van Sant had a movie coming out, or else it probably would have made one or more of the lists we've been talking about of things we've been looking forward to. You're a Gus Van Sant fan, right?
Oh, definitely. Big fan of Paranoid Park and Elephant on those two films, and I love them.
And Gus Van Sant is a director who wears a couple hats. He can be the film, like the films you mentioned, are very independent, don't have any stars in them, very minimalist. I would call that the art house Gus Van Sant. And then there's the mainstream Gus Van Sant, who makes films like Good Will Hunting, which is probably his most popular film still.
But almost art house, because pretty much nobody knew outside of Robin Williams who those guys were.
That's true. But he also
almost art house.
He also went on to make Finding Forrester. Milk is a film that got a lot of mainstream attention, but still had an auteurist bent to it. This film looks more in the line with Milk than any of those other films we mentioned. It's called Promised Land, and it was co-written by Matt Damon, which I think this might be his first script since Good Will Hunting, and John Krasinski of The Office. And also based on a story by Dave Eggers, who is a popular novelist and writer.
It's about people who come to town and try and get them to sell their land for oil rights, and a couple people in the town, being John Krasinski and another person, lose their cool and start a riot, not a riot, but an uprising against the carpetbaggers, played by Matt Damon and Frances McDermott. Oh. And they try and get the town to boo them out of town and send them out on a rail.
Yeah, if I'd known this, again, this film, we probably won't see this calendar year. It's getting an Oscar run, which means it'll play in New York and LA at the very end of December. But that means it's coming to theaters probably February or so in the art houses that we can see it in. And it's definitely jumped up there on my radar. It's definitely a film I'm going to be looking forward to, because even though Gus Van Sant makes a film roughly every year, and some of them aren't as interesting as others. I never checked out the one he made last year, Restless. But with a cast like that, issues-heavy film like that...
I'm definitely peaked. I wouldn't say as high as you, mainly because of John Krasinski. I don't feel he's shown me anything that would make him other than a sitcom actor. I didn't care for Away We Go, which was more of his serious acting. But if it's Matt Damon penned, you know, he's got a good track record with one film in the can, I guess, which Good Will Hunting. But I'm a big fan of Gus Van Sant, and if it's not a mega release, I'm not the hugest fan of Milk, but I think this could be a really cool story.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a film that's way down the calendar, but a film that's so way down the calendar that it hasn't even been officially announced yet is one that, but the trailer's already out. That's the funny thing about this film. We're talking about Thanksgiving, the Eli Roth film that was featured in the theatrical version of the film Grindhouse. In the middle, there was a series of fake trailers, including Machete by Robert Rodriguez, that eventually got made into a feature, even though I believe the joke was originally supposed to be that these are all trailers for fake movies, correct?
Oh, definitely. I think the reason that he ended up doing this one is because Hobo with a Shotgun, which was the fan fake trailer that made it into the movie. Is that correct?
It made it in the European release. They added Hobo with a Shotgun.
That actually got made, and while I think that's a terrible film, Eli Roth could not pass up the joys of unleashing this monstrosity onto his fans.
For those of you who are still catching up to what we're talking about, Thanksgiving is it's a mock trailer, and like I said, it was in Grindhouse, but it follows a pilgrim-type serial killer. It's a parody of a slasher film. Parody, I think, is maybe not the right word. But it's a kind of a take off the slasher films that are set on certain holidays, like Valentine's Day, I believe it's one, Prom Night,
Black Christmas.
Black Christmas, yeah, that's one of the more famous ones. It's probably my favorite thing I've seen of Eli Roth's is this 3-minute trailer. Kind of gross. I don't think we'll post it on our website. Maybe we'll post a link to it. I don't know.
It's not exactly safe for work.
Yeah, so. it's definitely not safe for work, but it's probably, like a lot of people think the fake trailers were the best part of Grindhouse, but the more they actually flesh them out, the weaker the joke is getting. Eli Roth, I don't think, has directed a film since Hostel 2. There's always been talks of different films he's going to be doing, but it was announced this week that they finally cracked the script for a feature-length Thanksgiving, and it's possible it could come out fall of 2013, making it his next film. It'd be so odd that you would wait so long to direct a movie and then go to what is more or less a trifle or a pastiche.
Yeah, the trailer for it, the fake trailer, is, in my opinion, what could be termed a gluttonous farce. It's just over the top.
Yeah, and that's why it's funny. And then you get, but you wouldn't, I don't know how much I would want to watch it for 90 minutes.
That's what I'm thinking. For 3 minutes, the joke's all right. For 90 minutes, oh man.
It's probably my favorite thing I've seen of Eli Roth, because I didn't like Cabin Fever. Haven't seen the Hostels all the way through, but I probably couldn't make it more than 3 minutes. But I will probably check it out based on curiosity, but I would rather these filmmakers get back to making films that are actual movies and not, as Tarantino would put it, movies that the characters in movies would watch. That's how he referenced Kill Bill and Grindhouse, his section of Grindhouse Death Proof. If it gets made, and that's a big if. I doubted Machete would get made, though, so what do I know?
Well, I guess it's time for us to push on to the feature review for the week. A little friend of Jacob's, a fan favorite of his, would that be Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Premium Rush.
Hello? Wiley? I got a package for you. 90 minutes, Premium Rush.
Hey, that envelope you picked up, I gotta ask for it back. Who are you? Not your problem.
Yeah, the thing is, once it goes in the bag, it's gotta stay in the bag.
Your name, family,
People who care if they see you again.
A 20-something bike messenger lives a carefree life biking the city streets of New York until one day he unwittingly picks up a dangerous parcel that sets him up for a run-in with an unhinged cop and the Chinese mob.
One time or another, we all get hit. Sometimes we gotta hit back.
The end of summer is generally considered the proverbial dumping ground for studios where films are released that are not expected to bring in box office gold, but might have an audience somewhere. And then here we find Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the current Hollywood it boy, in a film that could be considered an enticing thriller. Jacob, you are what I have generally termed a fanboy of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Would you say that this film fits the proverbial dumping ground description, or is it above that?
I am a big fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I'll say that upright, and I think he's probably, maybe if he's not the best part of this movie, he's at least the second best part. But this movie, it doesn't belong in the dump or the trash heap or the impound yard if you want to try and keep going with bike puns or whatever. But I was actually quite disappointed in this movie. In theory, it's the kind of thriller I like. It's it's fast. It's going to be a chase movie for the most part. It's going to be set in a limited time frame. A lot of thrillers I like are set in course of a couple of hours or real time. And this essentially has a Hitchcock plot. It's an everyman caught up in extraordinary circumstances. But this film just had too many unnecessary parts and just left me bored for parts of it. Pat, did you like it?
I am on the opposite end of the stick here. Finally, another one that we aren't agreeing on. I thought it was just straight up fun with a hero that, he's not doing the, obviously, like you just said, he's not doing something that isn't his job, but he's doing something that he doesn't know is extremely dangerous. And I thought the pace and the music really added to it. And when you have these type of films where somebody is so good at what they do and they have to take it to another level, generally they kind of make that person too cool. And his the other bike messenger that he's kind of racing against a couple times and has a feud with, he's the guy that's too cool and a little nauseating at times. But Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I thought this film could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for him and for Michael Shannon, somebody who obviously was just given full reign to go crazy. But I really was enjoying just the general ride of, hey, here's 95 minutes of, biking around New York City films that generally I'm not a fan of just putting a movie in New York City. But this is, to me, Die Hard with a vengeance on a bike.
I was feeling exactly what you were feeling for about the first third of the movie. And this isn't spoiling anything to say the film plays with time a lot. And it will flash back to earlier in the day. And I felt it was the first time it did that is when it went off the rails for me. And it just spent way too much time explaining, I'm going to use the term MacGuffin. And MacGuffin is a Hitchcock term for the thing everybody is after. There's a pretty good mystery going on what it is in Joseph Gordon-Levitt's bag that is so important to these characters. They over-explain it first, or they explain why the villain is in such a crappy situation for way too long. When it's just going with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and he's chased and we don't know why, the film is really exciting for the most part. When it's bike chases, it's really exciting. But I think maybe they realized it'd be too short of a film if it was just that, and they felt the need to pad this with these unnecessary parts. There are scenes that could have been covered with just lines of dialogue, like explaining why Michael Shannon's character wants what's in the bag, or explaining what it is in the bag. There's really a lot of exposition, which surprised me because it's directed by David Koepp, who is a very famous screenwriter, probably one of the highest paid screenwriters in Hollywood. He wrote Jurassic Park. He's written a lot of stuff for Steven Spielberg. But as a director, he always makes films that I think come to be disappointing in the end. I'm thinking Secret Window and what's that Kevin Bacon movie with the dead people?
The only one I saw on his list was Stir of Echoes.
Yeah, Stir of Echoes. I think are films that are really good at setting a tone, but are always disappointing at the end. And I think that's the case with this film. When it's a chase, it's really exciting, but when it gets involved in plot, less so.
Yeah, when I was looking at his writing background, because I'm not very, don't really know much about him, David Koepp, it seemed that this film had a lot with exposition in the same way that Mission Impossible or 1994 The Shadow. I think you and I have even talked in the past about how I am a major fan of Mission Impossible and how many people feel it's too confusing, it's overwritten, there's too many turns that don't make any sense. And I'd say in this film, it kind of borrows that same type of idea that it's Michael Shannon's backstory is overdone and the Chinese mob aspect of it is a little much, but I'm okay with that. It kind of seemed like it was it's kind of showing an underside, seedy belly type of New York that most people don't see, kind of to me in the way that the Pope of Greenwich Village kind of does, if you've seen that film.
I have not. And I don't want to sound like I really had a bad time at this movie, because the bike stuff is really exciting. I think the cast is good. You mentioned Michael Shannon. I hinted at earlier, I think is the best part of this movie. And at first, I was turned off by the performance because it's really wackadoo.
Oh, absolutely. It's him turned to 11.
But then I realized it's at least interesting. If this villain was like an action movie villain of the 80s or 90s and was played by William Sadler or something, he'd just be intense and he'd just want the bag, and he wouldn't be nearly as interesting as Michael Shannon is to watch. That guy is just fun.
Well, I think the first flash backwards is his backstory and what made him need this piece that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is carrying, and I kind of feel that kind of sets up why he is so unhinged. He does something in that flashback that kind of makes him realize that he is off the rails. Maybe not, consciously, but he at least unconsciously goes into this Nick Cage style of, making a film.
I think it just takes too long to do it. And I think anytime there's a flashback, it has the same problem. But, the action sequences, I'm praising a little bit, but I will say, they're the very end of the movie, but it gets more into bike stunts. And the actual final confrontation with Michael Shannon has a typical, something that probably looked really good on the page as an idea, but in execution came off as really lame and kind of anticlimactic. As a whole, I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt's fun. If you really like biking or fixed gear biking for some reason, it's probably a good time. I wouldn't say see it in the theaters, but I'd say rent it maybe.
Yeah, I think I agree completely with that. It's an interesting film in the way that it does play with, something that's kind of cool and fun and, X Games style biking at times. But you're exactly right. At the end, they almost go with the whole, the same problem we have with Spider-Man and the cranes, or in the Amazing Spider-Man, or in the first Spider-Man trilogy, where they're all standing on the bridge saying, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us type, just ridiculousness at some point. But still, I enjoyed it overall and would recommend it.
Don't rush it. Maybe just get standard shipping on this one. Oh, I feel horrible for even doing that. Premium Rush is rated PG-13 for some violence, intense action sequences, and language. When we come back from the break, we will be talking about what's new on DVD and finally give out the golden ACs. Ooh. Coming out on DVD this week, a film that, hey, it might possibly win a golden AC. I don't know. It's Battleship, the big summer movie that kind of flopped earlier this year. Also coming out this week, The Lucky One, which is a Nicholas Sparks movie, I believe, or based on a Nicholas Sparks novel. Pirates, Band of Misfits, from the crew that brought us Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit. Starship Troopers Invasion, which is an animated direct-to-video sequel to Starship Troopers. I probably will check that out at some point. And Think Like a Man, the modest hit. Played huge here. It was in the theaters forever here. Monsieur Lazare, which was a Best Foreign Film nominated for the Academy Awards this year from the French.
If I'm going to say anything, it's that I've only sadly heard of Battleship out of this group. That's not true. I've heard of Monsieur Lazare, but I have not seen any of them. And if any of them, I'll probably years from now watch Monsieur Lazare.
And you'll probably catch Battleship when it's on FX, be honest.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it with a bunch of guys or something late at night, looking for something to do. I'm not going to be searching it out.
And Pat, you just came back from vacation. Did you see anything cool? Do anything good?
I had something I saw on vacation. I went to Las Vegas for my 30th birthday. Not to, now everyone knows my age out there, jeez. But I saw a Cirque du Soleil. My mom wanted to go see Beatles Love Cirque du Soleil, but the tickets were ridiculous and we couldn't all sit together. So instead, we went to see Cirque du Soleil Ka, which is a Marvel Cirque joint production, something I didn't know until we were sitting in the theater.
Marvel as in Marvel Comics?
Marvel Comics. They teamed up with them and they surprise released it at Comic-Con. There was a one-issue comic that they gave out only to people at Comic-Con. I thought about buying. It's actually really reasonably priced buy it now on eBay, like $1 or $2 to get it. But it was, if anybody knows anything about Cirque du Soleil, they start swinging out over the audience. It's very colorful. They do a lot of acrobatics, and there was a good amount of that. But what really grabbed me about the show was the stage was set up in a way I'd never seen before. It was all these catwalks that were going over the audience and looked very steampunky with like brass colors and, almost wicker look to it. And I was really excited for them to do all this swinging over the audience, and then that never really came. So
Is it a superhero story? Can you tell it's a Marvel collaboration?
Well, the details. Okay, the general story behind it. This is one of the few Cirque du Soleil shows that has an actual narrative, and the story here is a princess and a prince who live somewhere in, I guess, an Asian world because it's very Asian themed. Are like martial arts style kids, and they're out to go visit another country and have a party. And when they go to visit, this war breaks out, and they end up getting separated. It's this giant journey to get back to each other and defeat the bad guy. And it is something different that I don't really put with Marvel is, this Asian themed dragon style ninja kung fu type stuff.
Are there a lot of contortionists?
Surprisingly not. The main feature of this show is there is a giant stage that can lift up and fold. It's like a horizontal parallel to the ground, and then it can become a 90-degree angle up against the ground, and people are climbing on it and doing all these swings, and obviously they're like ribbon flying through the air and things like that. But for some reason, it never truly met my expectation of coming out and almost kicking me in the face.
But it was still pretty cool.
Oh, definitely cool. And I snuck a couple pictures of the catwalks and whatnot, which I'll post on this blog.
Well, you had my interest, and now you have my attention. That's very...
I noticed in the notes that you put something that I've actually signed up for, but never utilized. Keep talking about your fanboyness of Mr. Levitt. What do you have here?
Exactly. We mentioned that I am a big Joseph Gordon-Levitt fanboy, and even though I wasn't crazy about Premium Rush, there's still a lot of opportunities to see him this year. Looper's coming up, and he's in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. But I wanted to talk about Hit Record, which is a website he created that is kind of a hub for creative projects.
I believe it's called Hit Record.
Hit Record. That makes a lot more sense. I've only seen it written out, so I'm going to trust your pronunciation.
Well, I think he was on David Letterman, and I saw that. That's the only reason I know.
And basically, it's crowdsourcing creative works, and it's a resource for collaborators to meet up and that sort of things. Pat's apparently a member, so collaborate with him. But I wanted to talk about... Are
you looking to put something on Hit Record?
Maybe I should. I should look into that. But I wanted to promote 2 videos that I saw on Hit Record. There are 2 that were directed by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and we'll put the link up. And there's one called Morgan's Date with Destiny, and its sequel, which I think is better, Morgan and Destiny's 11th Date, The Zeppelin Zoo. And this is a short film made with a crowdsourced script, and members of the Hit Record community did the editing and the special effects. But it stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Lexi Hume, who is an actress I've never heard of. Actors like Channing Tatum show up occasionally. And it's kind of a takeoff of silent era films, or what people think of when they think of silent era films. Weird sepia tones and funny language, even though silent films obviously don't have funny language. But it's a bit more mannered and quirky than you would see in a George Méliès film, but they're very fun. And I know they played at South by Southwest, but if you like quirky things, I would definitely check those out. And we'll put the links up.
Well, if the movies are duds, at least their names are hilariously awesome.
Yes, and if you laugh at the idea of the words 11th Date, The Zeppelin Zoo, then basically you'll like the movie. I guarantee it. And now, the moment, well, I've been waiting for. I've been really excited for this. It's our first ever awards giving out on a podcast. Giving out. There's a word for that. Distribution? Awards?
Bequeathing?
Bequeathing. And we wanted to... I love summer blockbusters. I'm shameless about them. I try and go to as many as I can when the summer rolls around. So I thought it'd be nice, a fun thing to do for the show, to do these golden ACs, which stands for air conditioning, because you beat the heat by going to these summer movies.
I kind of looked at these films as like, these aren't the movies that are going to take away big awards come December, January, or February, unless it's, generally a graphics award, CGI award. So I don't know how you did it, but I kind of looked at these films as like ones that are so awesome, the ones that you're like, hey, you know what? Let's pop in Batman: Dark Knight Rises. Not very often I'm with a group of people and I say, hey, let's pop in, a Wes Anderson film at a party or something. It's always summer films that people throw on, so they deserve some recognition for being awesome.
And I wanted to throw in some ground rules quick. What was the summer? I consider the summer blockbuster season to have started with The Avengers, and to have ended last week with The Expendables. And there were some blockbuster films and genre films before that this year, The Hunger Games and Cabin in the Woods, but we wanted to keep it strictly in that window between those superhero teams.
I might at some point disappoint you, Jacob, because
Well,
I don't know. That's not my rendition of summer.
Okay.
Well, I'll agree with you for the most
maybe
part.
we'll offer you an extension.
Yes, when I throw out John Carter as my pick of the summer.
That'd be an example of a film that wouldn't qualify for the Golden ACs.
Yes, no Hunger Games here, people.
Yeah, how did you think the summer was overall before we get into the awards?
It was interesting. I would say for comedy's sake, it was disappointing. And for action, I didn't feel like there were a great deal of just all-out action films like in previous years where there's just been one every weekend that knocks your brain out.
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad summer per se, but it was definitely a disappointing one. Because I think at the beginning of the summer, there was a lot of expectation. There were these big superhero movies. The Avengers started off things pretty well. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But and I had some hope for some surprises. I thought maybe Snow White and the Huntsman would be a pleasant surprise, or even Battleship I had hopes for. But
yeah, I think we're both timid, but it looks like you found some feedback from a person who just went full out with their comments. Why don't you share that with the group?
KCP was a little less optimistic than the both of us. He said, "Let's be honest, this year sucked in the large blockbuster movie department. Don't get me wrong, Avengers lived up to every expectation we had for it, but does anyone remember Battleship? This year, movies either fell into the it was a good idea, but they were poorly implemented, such as Dark Shadows and Snow White and the Huntsman, or we had high expectations for the film, but we were disappointed, like Prometheus and Spider-Man."
Casey had me until the end.
Well, without further ado, maybe we should get started, eh?
Yep, I agree, Canadian Jacob.
Well, the categories, which we put up on our website, and you can still visit that at filmcastwithoutacause.com. The first one we had up there was Best Quote-Unquote Heat-Up Film, which we thought to be the traditional blockbuster, the action and the superhero film.
We agreed along the lines of Marvel's Avengers, and something that your brother also seemed to agree with us. This is going to be the summer of Avengers for years to come. People will talk about this film, not because of its box office success, but just because of what Marvel was able to pull off and what, I don't think it's a perfect film, and your brother seemed to agree with his comments, but it pulled off something that nobody's ever done before, weaving in 4 or 5 different real movies into one.
And I'm sure we're going to have to talk about Avengers more throughout the film, throughout the giving out of the Golden AC, so I'll keep it brief. My vote was for the Avengers because it had the most superheroes, the most action. It was just the most as far as movies go this summer. Where did you stick your vote?
Well, since we decided on Avengers, my vote was for Premium Rush, which actually is after the Jacob imposed deadline. Yeah. But it was just, in my opinion, a movie that is summer. It's fun, it's nonstop, it's got a little bit of ridiculousness with some BMX nonsense. But it's something that I'll probably watch again just with like a beer in hand and looking for a good time.
Total opposite of the heat-up film. It's the best cool-down film, which we saw as being the indie, the art house, the films that were underneath the radar. And Pat and I, we didn't see every film this summer, so that's why we kind of left it up to the audience. I probably saw a lot more blockbusters than I saw art house films this summer, but my vote went to Moonrise Kingdom, which I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, and I think his style lends himself well to a children's point of view. I was just a big fan of this film, and I'll probably talk about it more as the year goes on. Where was your head at?
My head was in Beasts of the Southern Wild. It just, I really don't know if I've seen a film like this that was such a great combination of reality and fanciful wonder. And it's something that I've just kept thinking about since it come out, and I can't wait to actually see it again, most likely on Blu-ray. But your pick of Moonrise Kingdom, which won, which I haven't seen yet, was actually also voted on as by Ricky V, as we'll call him, a former coworker of ours, as his favorite movie of the summer. And he said it was a unique visual style that matched a directing style where the smallest emotion comes to mean so much.
Oh, my. Another film that got a vote was from Nathan C., who said Safety Not Guaranteed could be a good contender. Back when we thought maybe it would be a best sleeper hit category. That's a film I really wish I'd seen, and I hope it can't get to Blu-ray soon enough because I really want to see Safety Not Guaranteed.
It was in Des Moines this weekend, but I just couldn't get around to it.
That was the same story with me.
The next category is the Yuck Yucks, otherwise known as Best Comedy. I don't think we could come up with a summer-themed title for it. Personally, I think we're both on the same page with this. My pick was Ted. It was a dry summer for comedy, and when we reviewed this, I was laughing almost the whole way through, even if I felt bad about it. Jacob?
Yeah, this is the film I laughed the most at. And the only other comedies I saw were The Watch and Men in Black 3 and The Dictator. But yeah, the Golden AC goes to Ted, and when that comes to Blu-ray, I think that'll be a party favorite all around the country. The next category is something that's sadly a little too familiar with the summer blockbuster season. It's Best Franchise Film. And almost every major film this summer was part of a franchise in one way or another. It was either a sequel, prequel, or remake based off of a TV show or a book or a board game. My vote went to, and I think it's fair to say the Golden AC will go to, because I know where you voted to, went to The Avengers. It is a franchise film, but it's a completely different type of franchise film. The multi-film crossover. I can't think of another film that's tried to do what The Avengers does.
There isn't one. It doesn't make any sense to even consider one, in my opinion. But I said it was, it was wonderful and spectacular and huge, and every character brought something to it. And I would give it the best franchise for making the Hulk a viable product all by itself.
More on that maybe later. The next category we have is Best Story, which we put in parentheses direction or screenplay, the film that you thought executed its ideas the most, I think I would say. Got a couple different votes on this one. My pick for Best Story was Prometheus.
Interesting.
Which is kind of against the popular opinion because a lot of people are attacking that for its story. But when I think back on this summer, the film that kept me guessing throughout its runtime and where I never knew where it was going to go next, and that's basically what you want from a story. At least that's basically what I want from a story, is to have no idea where I'm going. That Prometheus was that film. And yeah, it left some questions on the table, but I like a film that I can revisit and try and parse the mysteries, as it were.
I see where you're going with Prometheus, and I would be on board, but as you know, after I saw it, we texted back and forth for a better part of an hour saying, wow, that was amazing. But
yeah, and
then this thing and the other thing and this last thing. So I actually chose Beast of the Southern Wild, which was our pick. It's kind of this movie that's it's lasted since January with Sundance, and then it took Cannes, and now everyone who's seen it this summer is just all it's in agreement that it's an amazing wonderment of an event that most people think it's based on Katrina. It's just a different story, and you don't know exactly what's happening, but it feels effortlessly original in where it's going and how it's portrayed, especially with its main characters.
Yeah, if the category was most original film, my vote would have been there. I'm really happy it's getting the Golden AC. Not that it needs any more awards.
I'm sure that they've been crossing their fingers while listening to our podcast. Going from Best Story, we go back to the fight 'em, smash 'em up movies that generally have taken over the theater for the last decade. Best Villain and Hero. My choice for Best Villain was Prometheus's David, because when I look back at this summer, this will be the character that I look back on. You don't really know that he's a villain, and he's not truly a villain, but he does some things that are just, obviously as an android, cold and calculated and bone chilling. Is unemotional, is not being emotional and just doing what he does is terrifying at times.
When you mention that probably is one of my favorite performances from this past summer was Michael Fassbender as David. I doubt he'll get an Oscar nomination or anything, so I'm glad he at least got a Golden AC nomination. And I wanted to read a tweet from my brother at A Rosdale, who tweeted the Filmcast Without a Cause Twitter. That's Filmcast WOAC, or at however Twitter works. And he said he's going to give his pick for Best Villain to Charlize Theron for Snow White and the Huntsman. She made that movie, in my opinion. And I have to admit, she was probably the best part of that movie. She definitely chewed up the scenery. And I don't know if I had a favorite villain this summer. I think there were quite a few good ones. I wanted to put a shout out to Tom Hiddleston from The Avengers as Loki, who I would at least say was most improved villain. I think he was one of the weaker parts of Kenneth Branagh's Thor. But he was definitely a fun part of the Avengers, even though he was just there to be evil. But he played it so big, and it was such a fun performance that I want to give it to Loki. But that's not who we gave it to. We decided the Golden ACs had to give some love to Batman. So the best villain for this round of the Golden ACs goes to Tom Hardy's Bane, who I would argue, what you said about Prometheus's David, that people remember years from now, if nothing else, because his voice is so much fun to imitate, which I will spare you from.
Yes, and I think if anything, the reason he'll be remembered is because it has been parodied and used as a joke, that voice, so many times. I would try, but I would also embarrass myself.
It's already a part of the pop culture language at this point. And the flip side of the coin, best hero of the summer.
Well, I'll go out first, since I think my pick, while it might be a little contrarian, and I sided with I think we both agreed on the best hero pick eventually, but I chose Abraham Lincoln because it's just insane that a treasured historical figure is laying vampires to waste. Jacob, what was your pick?
I went with Spider-Man because I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I think this is the best we've seen him portrayed on the screen. And I think Andrew Garfield was just so charming in that role, and I liked the new costume. And yeah, summer movies are kind of about aesthetics, so. But the Golden AC went to, I think, the guy who stole the show early on in the summer and continues to be talked about as the Hulk from Avengers. The Hulk is actually probably my favorite superhero.
Oh, interesting.
I keep defending the other cinematic interpretations of him, even though I know this is easily the best one. They finally got it they did it really well this time.
Yeah, and there's a line, it might be a spoiler to say it, so we'll just say there's a line towards the end of the film that is delivered that is possibly the line of the summer coming from the Hulk.
Yeah. Now we finally get to the biggest category, the quote-unquote beat the heat film of the summer. And we don't know what is on each other's minds here.
Would you care to do the honors, or would you like me to go
Well,
first?
I'll go first because it's pretty anticlimactic. I have to say The Avengers was the film of the summer because it peaked right there. People are still talking about it. Breaking box office records. It finally did something that comic book fans thought was impossible, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. Avengers is great. But I mean, you can't think about this summer without talking about The Avengers. So that was my pick. I'm very curious where your vote was.
Well, I got a little in my head for this pick because I was thinking down the line when I'm sitting around, I don't really go back and watch a lot of comic book movies. So I was like, Avengers is definitely the film of the summer. But when I'm thinking of a film that is just fun, easy to turn on, you can watch it and not get out of your head or get all nitpicky because I'm a recovered comic book nerd from way back and you don't like where it went. Or, I'm a big Bourne fan, but that is really not a summer film when it comes down to all the mountain climbing and snow in it. So this might be an interesting pick from earlier in the show, but I went with Premium Rush because, as I said, it is Die Hard with a vengeance on a bike. There is no capes. There's no superpowers. It is just in the sweaty summer of New York City, biking around, doing some crazy stuff. And it doesn't really have that right moment that takes you out of it.
I had a few there for me.
It's just fun. And to me, it's kind of like a summer film.
All right. Well, agree to disagree. I think the majority of votes we got for film of the summer, though, went to Avengers. One vote for Avengers comes from Brent R., who said, I liked a number of the summer movies and still have many to see, but The Avengers has felt the most satisfying so far. The scale was just so huge, and the result was so much fun. I really enjoyed its sense of humor, and seeing the Marvel film universe tie together so well seemed like a major accomplishment. I also loved Batman and Prometheus, though.
Can I throw out a former FWOAC guest? AJ Hodgman joined us last week on episode 8. He gave me a quick little Facebook comment just saying Dark Knight Rises, which he had just seen on Sunday, and then again on Monday.
Wow.
And of course, he says that was to be expected, but he's split because he also really enjoyed the story and action of Prometheus, but laughed more than expected at Ted. So it seems like he's on the fence for 3 films, but he's most likely coming down with Dark Knight Rises as his favorite. Yeah, and if I was being completely, objective and not being myself, it would definitely be Marvel's Avengers. This is the summer of Avengers.
Great. Well, we're going to wrap up things. We're going to get these golden ACs in the mail. They're pretty heavy because they are the size of air conditioners, and they are made of gold. So,
and actually, it's just gold tinfoil with chocolate inside of it.
Well, at least it's chocolate. As we do that, here's some music, and we'll be back to wrap up the show. New to theaters this week, the prohibition drama Lawless, the horror film The Possession, and the phone sex comedy For a Good Time Call. Pat, you know all about that, right?
Shh, my wife listens to this.
All right. We will be reviewing Lawless next week. I'm looking quite forward to it. It's from the director of The Road and The Proposition. That film. Really good Australian Western. Looks good. Great cast. Even if it does have Shia LaBeouf.
I was going to say, we're going to see a movie with Shia LaBeouf, who's eventually sounds like he's going to be in a Lars von Trier porno.
I will not see that one.
That's a news story for next week, I guess. We'll just leave that one soaking in your brain.
Yeah, great. Well, talking about things for future shows, and an idea Pat and I were tossing around is maybe we want to revisit some of the great film franchises of old and go through them film by film and review them on the podcast.
Well, this past weekend, Marita and I, my wife Marita, we watched Lethal Weapon 1, and it has been ages since I've seen it, and I was laughing every time I heard the saxophone soundtrack come through. But hey, it's still a decent movie. So eventually, we're looking at possibly doing Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Aliens, because Prometheus is coming out in October, and that might be our first. But if you want to persuade us either way, you can contact us. And there are several ways to do that. You can hit us with an email at filmcastwoac@gmail.com. You can hit us on Twitter at filmcastwoac. And of course, you can leave a comment on our blog. The website is filmcastwithoutacause.com. Once again, filmcastwithoutacause.com. It's all long, one-word address, but you can type it in. You'll get there eventually.
And I've been stupid busy this past week or so I haven't been a good blogger. But Pat, you did a pretty good post. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, well, basically, I felt after listening to last week's episode that maybe I came off a little too fanboy with my love for the Bourne Identity, Bourne Ultimatum series, Jason Bourne movies, with my defense of Bourne Legacy. And I thought that maybe I should pedal back a little bit and say why I thought that and maybe some of the warts that were in there. So if you want to go check that out, it's Fanboy Pat, The Bourne Legacy on filmcastwithoutacause.com. And since we're trying to get you people to give us as much feedback as possible, if you might remember from last week's show, AJ Hodgman, he wasn't in the whole thing and he didn't sit there quietly while we reviewed The Bourne Legacy. We actually called him after that to be part of the show. And his thoughts were, this is exactly the email, I'll just read it verbatim. I saw Bourne Legacy last night and I agree with a lot of the things you said about it on FWOAC. Haha, in your face, Jacob. But actually, then he went on to say, but I also agree on a lot of things Jacob had to say. Way to ride the fence, AJ. Said he loved Renner as Aaron Cross, but wanted more of him and less of the cutting back to the Bourne reactions. Just wanted to share my thoughts, AJ Hodgman.
I'm so glad we read that because that gave us a chance to pick on AJ once more, and we'll do that again in the future. But for now, it's time to wrap up this turkey. So for Filmcast Without a Cause, I'm Jacob.
And I'm Patrick.
Bye-bye now.
You know, I don't think anyone's gonna tell us when to leave.
Yeah, good call, Garth. I'll bet we're just gonna sit here, and when they're finished, they'll fade to black.
I can't believe they did that.
I told ya.